Welcome to the virtual workshop, episode 8. Thanks for being here as everyone comes in from the lobby. Just want to welcome you. Thanks for taking time on your Wednesday morning and joining us. It's been a really exciting week. Alan, where are you right now? You look like you're not in the home office.
I am in St. Paul, Minnesota.
All right. What are you doing up there?
I'm on site with 3M. We're doing some consulting around security.
Oh, very cool. Well, thanks for finding a way to join in. I know you've got a crazy day ahead of you. Are you going to stick around all day or just...
I'm unfortunately not going to be able to stick around through the whole thing, but I absolutely wanted to come and do two things. First thing I want to do is congratulate you publicly on your new role and give you an opportunity to really let the community know that if they haven't seen it on LinkedIn, one, they should go watch your video because it's great. But two, want to give you an opportunity that I know you wouldn't take otherwise to communicate what's going on with you.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, so it's been a crazy journey. About 2 or 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to really get to know leadership at Flow Software. And we started a conversation about what would it look like for me to join them in partnership. Started a conversation around that same time once I knew that it was something that I wanted to do with the leadership at Canary, and said, hey, this opportunity is coming up and I want to serve Canary well. And if I make this change, I want to, above all, I want to leave well. And so it's been a 2-year process of waiting for this moment, and it's really exciting. So Graham and I are partnering from a leadership side at Flow Software and working really well together. And that's 100% full-time for me starting January 1st. And to those in Integrate Live, just so you know, nothing changes on inside of this community with Alan and I's roles. So thanks, Alan.
Okay, I would like to do one more thing before I step out.
Okay.
If I can be given a little bit of leeway, I would like to pitch hit for my absolutely good friend and somebody who has done an incredible amount of work for me that has just really personally and professionally helped me. So I would like to do the dad joke for Ben Orchard.
Well, hold on. You may not know this yet, Alan, because this is like last minute pinch hit, but look who's joined us as a guide today, knowing that you were leaving us. We've got Ben stepping into your role to be a guide. So I think it's fitting.
He's absolutely going to do an incredible job. And I would like to do the dad joke for him so that as a favor to him.
Okay.
I would like that too.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I came home last week and found my kids on eBay all day. And if they don't get sold by tomorrow, I'm going to lower the price.
Oh man. Okay, good. Well done. What did Ben approve?
Off my responsibilities to Ben Orchard.
Have a good day, Alan. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks. Love you, Ben.
Yeah, Alan. All right. Well, let's get started. And exactly as you just heard, Alan isn't going to really be with us in the guide role today. So Ben, super gracious, said, hey, put me in. I'll help out. Ben, thank you for that. And we're joined by Ira Sharp today. So Ira is stepping in as a guide today for us as well. Ira's role with Phoenix Contact is messaging, marketing, voice and face, and everybody on probably already knows Ira and appreciates the content he puts out. Hey, Ira, how are you today?
Doing great, Jeff. It's so great to be here, and just to have this conversation and be part of the general chat here. It's really exciting, and it's quite frankly fun and refreshing. So look forward to the rest of the day here for sure.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for being here. And I want to kick us off before we move down to the tech stack. Ben, Ira, any idea what a pirate's favorite letter is?
I'm assuming it's R.
Ben?
Yeah, I'm going with R.
No, it's the one from the general manager saying he's been traded to the Astros.
Ah. That just happened.
Whoosh.com.
That for our non-North American audience, Pirates baseball team, worst
Oh,
forever and ever and ever.
thank you for
Kind of like
helping the.
kind of like cricket, okay? Except, well,
Yeah,
another.
I appreciate you filling in for the lost Aussie.
All right, Ira, tell us who's joining us on the tech side today.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff. I think we got a great group with us here today that'll really allow us to dig into our topic here. And I'm excited to introduce particularly here the whole group. Starting over on the right-hand side, we have Mr. Dave Eifert himself, known as Mr. IoT on LinkedIn. And within Phoenix Contact, he's the Senior Business Development Manager for IoT. And he leads a group of a sales team that focuses in on control systems and IoT throughout the US market. And as part of his team is Steve Redkay. And Steve Redkay is located up in the northeastern part of the United States and deals a lot with directly with customers, really putting the wrench to the bolts to make things happen in terms of PLCs, applications, and all things automation. Both of these gentlemen have been with Phoenix Contact for quite some time, and it's great to have them part of the automation team. And then over on the Opto 22 side, of course, leading the charge there at the top is Benson. And Benson is a longtime veteran in this control system space. And he actually, I think, is really fitting for this conversation, because if I'm not wrong here, Benson, you started in IT and then you went over to OT. So, I know it was quite a few years ago, but it's a great bridge to IT and OT. And I know that's a good part of the conversation and really this whole open topic that we'll be talking about and data-driven sustainability and what we have going in that regard is really bridging these two gaps together. And then helping him is Terry Orchard, who is part of the Opto 22 team on the technical side to really, again, put to really make things operate and work within the Opto 22 ecosystem. So I think we have a great group here, Jeff. Truly do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because I think I've seen more of Terry than anybody on the group, just from all of the YouTube videos and the content, Terry, that you've helped train. Thank you for that, because it's been.
I've learned a thing or two. Thanks, Terry.
Absolutely.
Happy to help.
Absolutely. Well, welcome, Vincent. Welcome, Terry. Steve, Dave, we're so glad to have you on here. Let's talk just a little bit for those that this might be their first time on an Integrate Live webinar. You're in the virtual workshop right now. The virtual workshop is designed so that we identify a problem, a real business problem that we can try to solve. We show you some tech that you could use to solve that. We walk through the process of how that would actually get deployed. And then we give you pricing and have a conversation with some Q&A around the entire project. So that's today, virtual workshop. This is our 8th iteration of that. And then the following Wednesday, we do the rundown. And the rundown is the follow-up conversation. Same people come back and we talk about the projects from the virtual workshop. We tell stories, we joke around. It's just a great time. It's really, really good to listen to live on your maybe over a lunch break or on your way into work or the office if you want to grab the recording of it later on. Now, next week's rundown, I'm already gonna go ahead and just predict next week is going to be the new bar for rundowns, because I know these guys so well, and already the conversation's going in 1,000 different ways. That's just frankly all kinds of fun. So make sure you come in next week for the rundown. You can do that live on YouTube or on the Integrate Live LinkedIn channel. And all of this is available to you on integratelive.com. Integratelive.com is where we're hosting our community. It's where all of the recordings, this one, the previous ones are all available to you. And it's also where we talk about the things that we're passionate about outside of work. So topics like, hey, this is the way that I geek out over coffee. This is the project I'm building in my garage. This is what I do on the weekends and my weekend warrior. So come on in and join that conversation. Join at integratelive.com. All right. All the plugs are done. Let's get down to it. Ira, Ben, walk us through what we're actually doing today. Ira, what's the business use case?
Well, what we're really looking for here is what we're really looking to do is we're looking to bridge this gap. And when you look at the world today and you look at the goals and objectives of many companies, there's this theme of sustainability, right? And when you look at sustainability, it's all about what are you using, how are you using it, are you being eco-friendly, these types of things. And it's paramount not only for operations, but it's also really important for business systems and making sure that shareholders or whoever else and customers and all these other stakeholders are comfortable with where you are as a company. And when you look at sustainability, there's lots of different ways you can go with it. But in a lot of cases, it's taking a lot of external data in some instances to pull it into what may otherwise be a air-gapped or isolated system. And that's one of the key things that we're going to focus in today is, how can you take data that is maybe sitting in a web API or on a website, weather, environmental, utility data, as you see there on the screen, and actually pull that in to a control system so you can use that information to impact how you're doing your day-to-day operations, and then ultimately closing that loop to further your sustainability efforts as a company. So I think this is very fitting. I think it's timely, and we're going to take a look at doing all this in a very secure fashion, because of course, anytime you're poking those little holes to get that data back and forth, security is one of those key things that you need to be aware of and consider. So that's the closed loop system that we're looking to take a look at here today.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the sustainability initiative is really what has started to drive operations to look outside of the control network for data. And so you might be on the fence and saying, "No, this sustainability talk, I don't know." Well, listen, you can push as hard as you want. It's coming. It's going to be part of your job. It's going to be part of your workflow. It's going to impact your process. So we want to be ahead of it and talk about ways that we can thrive. And whether you agree with the concept or not, as far as the initiative, let's talk about how we can just improve the process and make it better through some improved workflows. All right, Ira, you want to give us maybe just a little bit of what's going on in that sustainability world?
Yeah. So when you look at sustainability, I think I have a little tidbit here from a report that I read. But even beyond this, so totally off the script because it seems fitting for this conversation here, Jeff. So I'm taking some liberties. I bought a pair of shoes off of Amazon just 2 days ago. That pair of shoes was Brooks. And when I got the pair of shoes, right in the upper left-hand corner of the Brooks shoes that I got, it said, designed with sustainability or something along those lines. But even Brooks as a company has focused on this topic of sustainability for their manufacturing process, for their efforts. And I think it's fitting for a lot of companies, whether it be for marketing, whether it be for reducing your overall carbon footprint, whether it be for making yourself better as a company, to whatever reason you want to do it, to make yourself a better employer, to attract more talent. There's lots of different reasons to look at this high level topic of sustainability. Now, when we look at it from the point of view where we are as a lot of control systems engineers and people looking to move data around, I think this is an interesting fact that was in a recent report that was a cooperation between Microsoft and Intel that talks about the sustainability footprint is being optimized, and what you see here, it is being the investments in this area are being increased 26% over the next 3 years. So while you can look at it and you can say it's a fad, it's not going to stay, whatever it may be, there's tidbits like this that are happening in the industry that are really showing that this topic is growing. And I think it is becoming more and more important for companies to not only keep themselves sustainable in their own operations, but to make themselves, a bigger target for, like I said, acquiring employees and really just being a better company for the overall environment as a whole. So I think it's really interesting, and personally, I think it's great that companies are looking to move in this direction.
Yeah, and depending on where you are right now, this has a different impact on you. If you're in Middle America, you're like, well, electricity just isn't that, energy cost isn't that high. I was just in Alaska in a microgrid conference a couple months ago. One of those villages, cost of diesel $14 a gallon. And believe me, they care about utilization of resources. If you're in South Africa, if you're almost anywhere other than Kansas, United States, let's just say it that way, right? Like, you understand how important it is to monitor water and electricity usage. This is what we're talking about. So how are we evolving? What's it look like, Ira, coming forward? And Ben, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, sorry, I just jump in here to both of your points. It actually just hit my newsfeed this morning. Microsoft, Jeff, you're saying depends on where you are in the world. Microsoft Europe have just come out and said, look, we're seeing a steeper than expected jump in expenses for power, heat, and cooler company services and data services across Europe. So because of rising energy prices over there, Microsoft are saying it's getting expensive to run our data servers. So cloud computing is getting expensive for them in Europe. So as you say, Jeff, depends on who you are, where you are, and the scale that you're putting in.
Yeah. So Ira, what's one of the ways that this is potentially getting solved? What are some of the ideas around how to move forward into data-driven sustainability?
Yeah, and of course, there's lots of different ways you could slice and dice this and how it can to really move things forward. But it's very fitting for the conversation that we have here today, because we can really look at next generation PLCs. And when you look at next generation PLCs, I think in these sustainability efforts, when you really want to pull it in to a process, to a system, to an operation, you need to be able to have hooks from external variables or non-traditional industrial variables to industrial control systems. And that's what we're going to be demonstrating here today. It's a perfect fit. And to even further this point, when you look at what next generation PLCs are, or open PLCs are, this is Microsoft's definition. They call it soft PLC. Now, when you look at what a soft PLC is, according to this report between Microsoft and Intel, they defined a soft PLC as the decoupling of software and hardware in an industrial control system or in a PLC. And I think this is really important because of a couple of different reasons. Number one, it breaks that vendor lock that you may have had in the past, having everything dependent onto one particular box. And it also allows users to keep up with the Joneses, you could say, where if there's technology that's advancing faster than a particular manufacturer wants to advance their products, you can now get it because the software and the hardware are decoupled. And when you look at the moment in time we're in today with supply chain challenges, this offers a host of other opportunities to a user, because if you're not dependent on a closed system of both hardware and software together, you can potentially get different hardware pieces to run different software pieces. And with this, there is 45% of companies that are running different types of proof of concepts with this idea. And it spans from discrete manufacturing to process automation. And there's lots of things that I can go into to help talk about that. But the other thing that I just wanted to point out with this is Phoenix Contact and Opto 22, I think, are great representations of what this open PLC topic is about, where both of us as companies have PLCs that can perform their functions and they come with the software included, but they're both very flexible in the way that they can use third-party software. We're going to be talking a lot about Node-RED today, but there's a host of other things that can run on this. You don't have to only be stuck with what's there today. The world is your oyster, we say, and with great power comes great responsibility. And there's a lot of truth to that. And but with that gives you a lot of power to really move things forward. And if you really understand the two companies, Opto 22 and Phoenix Contact, in this automation space, you may be looking at us and going, hey, these are classic competitors in this open automation space. And here we are together on a Integrate Live doing a demonstration. And I think it's very fitting because while we are co-opetition, we like to say, we really have the same vision in mind. And that vision is open control and really advancing manufacturing, advancing this space to allow people to connect to more assets, to more devices, to bring it into one application and to be able to prove out maybe systems and operations that weren't possible before. So yes, while we do compete here and there, at the end of the day, we are striving for the same efforts, for the same things. And with that in mind, I think it is perfectly fitting that we are here together to try to demonstrate really a similar type of a way of solving a common problem in really two unique ways. So that's what I'm really excited about here, Jeff.
Yeah, and to you and Benson's credit, just because those that are on the webinar don't understand kind of the what's happening necessarily behind the scenes all the time. But Alan and I, when we talk to a vendor that's interested in sponsoring Integrate Live, we say, hey, we'd love to have you. Here's the humble, open, transparent. That's our core values. That means open. That means you have to be open to other people selling products that are similar to what you sell, being part of this. And both organizations, Phoenix Contact and Opto, are like, absolutely, like Opto needs to be here. Phoenix Contact says, Opto says Phoenix Contact needs to be here. They embrace these things. And so Benson, Ira, Steve, Dave, Terry, Ben, thank you from the community's perspective for coming together and showing us a cool way to use either tool today and do this thing. So speaking of that, let's run through what are we looking at today? Groove Epic. Okay, so Groove Epic, for those that aren't as familiar with Opto as those that are, Groove Epic is your, well, why am I describing it? Benson, tell us a little bit about Groove Epic, and then also just tell us the Groove Rio, if you would, real quick. And then let's have Dave cover PLC next.
Sure. So Groove Epic, EPIC is an acronym, as odd as that may be, for Edge Programmable Industrial Controller. So somewhat to like PLC Next, it's more than a PLC, right? So it's truly an industrial controller that has a lot of PLC functions, controller runtime. And one of the core pieces of that is making sure that there's a lot of different ways to interface to that control engine. And a control engine could be a number of different softwares, as Ira just pointed out. So those API interfaces are important. And then also, HMI, having something built in to the system so that you can actually access it and interface with the device without it necessarily being at a control level. And then VPN, in today's world, we all know we've been locked up in our homes maybe, or sequestered in an office, and have to get to other devices, some of our devices that we deployed. So being able to use open technology like VPN to permit secure remote access is also a core value of what these products offer. Now on Rio, this demonstration is built upon the Groove Epic system, but Rio is kind of a scaled down version of the Groove Epic that provides some onboard I/O, comes at a slightly less cost, but most of the capabilities of Epic are found in Rio, but we're going to focus on Epic today.
Okay, great. And so Dave, on the PLC Next side, tell us just a little bit, if you would, real quickly before we jump into actually building this out.
Kind of a carbon copy. We started off with a blank slate, and you can probably best think of it as one box that has a traditional PLC inside of it, as well as a Linux box, open Linux operating on the other side of it, and they can talk to each other inside. All goes on underneath the hood. So that's kind of the layman's term for it, in addition to everything that Benson just said. And again, it's all driven by the idea that, we've progressed as a society with a lot of different technological breakthroughs that hasn't necessarily been reflected on the factory floor so much. So this is, I think, in both our cases, our manifesto that, hey, guess what? We can take advantage of all the massive amount of technological revolution that's been out there, driven by the consumer world, driven by companies like Apple and everybody else like that in those spaces, and bring that to the factory and be more efficient and democratize the way projects are developed, and to stay up to date with the latest and greatest in terms of connectivity. And there's different programming languages that all of a sudden come into the equation that weren't there for people doing PLC programming just a couple of years ago. So it's an exciting time, and as you'll see through this presentation, there's a lot more possibilities than were ever able to be done before with traditional PLC.
Cool. Thank you, Dave. Now listen, we're going to move into a convo on Node-RED. Dave, do me a favor, double check that mic for me. We could make you out, but it's not great. Drop down on the mic icon and just make sure you've got the right one source for us. It sounds like it might still be on.
I only really see one option, so I don't know why it's not picking up the cams mic, but
That's all right. Okay, fair enough.
right, louder.
We
talk quieter.
we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Hey, listen, the third piece of the tech stack today, Node-RED. I want to throw a quick poll up. So do me a favor, if you don't mind, participate in this. We'd like to just know, curious, I'm going to only leave it up for 30 seconds. What type of experience have you had in Node-RED? None at all, or some, and I've just used it kind of at home or in test environments, or, oh no, I'm already using Node-RED and I'm using it in a production environment. Y'all are quick. Okay. Last 5 seconds.
I'm really curious to see the answer to this poll.
Okay. So I did this poll on LinkedIn this week. I had about 33% said using it in production, 66% no, not using it in production. But it felt like maybe the audience might be a little bit more lenient towards that, right? Based on just, who I'm connected to. All right, poll is ending. All right, so here we go. Share those results. 12% currently using it in production, 48% familiar. So that would take us to 60% of our audience is familiar with Node-RED and has experience on it. 40% have not yet. So interesting thing, 40% have not used Node-RED yet. I would imagine if we polled graduating engineers from university, that we would see a 90% familiarity with Node-RED. Anybody push back on that?
No, I would agree. I think you're on the money there, Jeff. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with it, this is we're glad you're here. This is going to be a great virtual workshop. Let's solve this problem. Terry, you ready to kick us off?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, as you do so well, teach us what we need to know about Node-RED before we start using it.
Alrighty, so the first thing about Node-RED that you'll immediately see is that it's an open source visual editor. And being a visual editor, you don't actually need to interact with written code much at all. It's a very low code interface. And using this interface, you can interconnect all sorts of different systems and services together. So this includes things like physical I/O, like you'll see on our PLCs featured today, your files in your file systems, databases either on site or in the cloud, as well as other cloud systems and APIs. And you get to this editor just through your browser of choice. The interface is just served up to you. You just bring it in and build out your flow. And so let's get to the next slide, and we'll take a little bit of a talk about the nodes you've got. And here you can see an example of some flows built. So there you can see the palette on the left-hand side, the list of all the node elements you can drag in, and then you just wire them together in the main workspace there to actually build out your application. Once you've got everything built up, you just deploy it to your runtime right there from your editor in the browser, and it'll start running there on whatever server you have it installed on. So the next question might be, well, what nodes do I have in my palette? What do I have to work with here? And first and foremost, you do have the core pre-installed nodes. So this includes things like decision-making switch nodes, data parsing nodes, nodes that change your data in some way or another, and some others like communication with MQTT. But Node-RED is largely community-driven, being open source software. So anyone can build their own node packages and make them available to everyone. So for example, there are Opto 22 node packages that allow you to easily interact with your system, with your IO, with your HMI, whatever. And also you can search for other node packages to do what you need. So there are over 4,000 Node-RED node packages available. Here you can see we've just come to flows.node-red.org, which lists everything out. And we've just done a quick search for Modbus. And you can see there are 6 pages of results there just for this one term Modbus. So you can easily get what you need, download and install the package, and start using them in your own flows. It's very powerful and very flexible.
And so what is Node-RED actually built on?
So that's a great question. That's a bit about the Node-RED interface and the nodes themselves. But what's happening in the background is that it's really just a nice, accessible wrapper for Node.js. So it's all just JavaScript under the hood. And so this means that it is event-driven and non-blocking. That's kind of fancy terminology, but essentially what that means is when your code runs is determined by some event happening. So this could be a button press on a physical system. It could be an HMI interaction, could be communication from MQTT or a change in a database, or just something that happens every 5 minutes or every day. So once this event happens, you go out and you do what you need to do. For example, you could do an HTTP request. But while that HTTP request is waiting for its response, Node-RED doesn't block other things from happening. Your flows keep running asynchronously all the time. And then once it's finished with that request, it just works with the response and you get this really nice flow going. And so this keeps the load pretty low with whatever system you're running Node-RED on. So this system could be a PLC like we're working with today. It could be a Raspberry Pi, a laptop, your desktop computer, or it could run on a server, either on premise or even in the cloud. So altogether, that just makes Node-RED extremely powerful for working with different systems and services. I personally like to think of it as a kind of sticky glue that connects things together that otherwise might not be able to easily communicate. And Node-RED just really brings it all together and gives them a common space to all interact and share their data.
Just from my own firsthand experience, somebody who, I'm not a developer, I don't know a coding language. My Node-RED is something I can approach without that huge intimidation because of that visual editor. And well, best of all, we haven't mentioned it yet, open source and free. We'll get more to that in the pricing, yes. But no reason not to give it a shot and try it out. Hey, questions are coming up as they do, as we've just seen, drop them in the Q&A, and Ben's standing by to answer those. We'll review them at the end, and some of them we might hold to answer live. Perry, awesome job. Thank you. Time to kick it off. So Phoenix, show us how you use Node-RED, PLC Next. Give us, actually, I guess a real case study of how you used it together in the field to solve a problem. Dave, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. We've actually used it a number of occasions, similar applications. Getting back to the sustainability theme, one way in which it was used was to query a U.S. Geological Survey website for some real-time weather conditions, river conditions, I should say, in terms of depth as well as flow rate. And then that would allow or disallow withdrawing from that water body. That could be used then to fill up a tank. And then we could also watch some moisture gauges in the field and determine whether it needed water or didn't need water. And then in that way, we're able to irrigate a field in a kind of more sustainable way, because if there's proper moisture, you don't bother watering it. If the river is running dry, so to speak, you don't withdraw from it. So keeping all those things in mind and in balance, and using the tank as a way to perform your storage function. So that's kind of the background. This type of scenario was possible before, but it took a lot of manual intervention. As you can see in this graphic here, you see somebody sitting at their desk at a computer. They were able to go out and query this U.S. Geological Survey website, like anybody would look at a website, go around, look at it. They would then be able, then they would have to go and control system and whether yes they could run or no they could not run. A lot of different systems at play in that scenario, and a lot of human intervention at play, really with no value add. And this is the common thread in a lot of different applications we've had in this way. The better way to do it is to utilize a piece of control hardware, such as PLC Next, that is capable of running Node-RED, and then building some Node-RED flows to go out and automatically query the website, see what the current conditions are, and then set into motion a control strategy to do what it should do at any given time. So that's kind of the setup here. And I think to get into a little more in depth, well, before we do that, let me just quickly review some of the, for people who don't know Phoenix Contact very well. So what we used in this solution were a subset of what you see on the screen here, some PLCs, specifically PLC Next, the top left. You see HMIs and industrial PCs on the top right. We didn't really even need one locally for this. If we were to have used one, we would simply have used a web panel with no real software running on it, except for a web browser, because the PLC Next has an implicit SCADA or a HMI built into it that you can just harness from that way. You could also look at it on a phone or any kind of tablet, so you wouldn't really need an HMI piece of hardware. At the bottom left, you see some cybersecurity and remote connectivity products. And again, most of the time when you're doing something like this, you're going to need a router or cellular modem or something like that to get the information back to some of those locations. So yeah, we harness that as well. So that's all for that page. Phoenix Contact, again, for those who aren't familiar, we're just about 100 years old. Pretty surprised for our age. We just crossed, I think, 3 billion euros in sales last year, and we're heading well past that today. German-based company, but as you can see on this slide, we've got 19 international companies and a large presence here in the United States with just over 1,000 employees based all around the U.S. And starting from our headquarters, which is where I'm sitting today for a change, in Ira's office in Harrisburg.
So something of just that's to me of noteworthy here. Typically, when we see these, frankly, very large companies, right, these global leaders and conglomerates that have all these divisions, what we don't see is necessarily cutting edge, open, no platform lock. So well done, Phoenix Contact. Thanks for being big and not acting as others might. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the portfolio, Dave.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on this. Just today we're focusing on that kind of that first column, automate with PLCs, HMIs, but we've got a whole raft of other types of products that people are probably most familiar with, terminal blocks and things like that from Phoenix Contact. But it is a very wide portfolio, deep portfolio, and growing all the time. So that's why we keep adding more people and try to keep up with it. But for our sake here, we're going to keep it mostly relevant to the automation discussion. And as you, that's where a lot of creativity and a spirit of entrepreneurialism and openness and kind of collaboration has really taken hold. So we're hoping to illustrate that today. And to really get into the nitty gritty of how this is built up, we're going to introduce Steve Redkay. And by the way, I don't think we've been doing dad jokes, but maybe we can get Steve to do one.
Nothing like putting him in the hot seat.
Awesome. Yeah.
How's that for a segue? Be funny.
Okay.
Welcome
Okay.
Funny now.
Funny now. So what is green and sits outside all winter?
I don't know.
No idea.
Old patio furniture.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
There was a lot of pressure. That wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't that great, but okay. Yeah. So what we're looking at here, David mentioned the PLC Next controller. That's kind of, you know, what is symbolized in this center orange block here. So it really is a Linux OS running on the PLC, but we are sharing. We have a preempt real time running on the Linux as well. So we actually have a traditional PLC functionality with real-time IO deterministic updates running on here. And you can use that PLC as just a traditional ladder logic IEC 61131 programming environment. but you can really also take full advantage of the Linux capability and run, as Terry had mentioned, Node-RED. You can run containers, high-level languages, really, any options really available at that point, running on the Linux environment. How we're sharing that information back and forth. There's a RESTful API running on that PLC as well. We're just passing data between the PLC and the Linux OS. Again, because it is a Linux, we're taking full advantage of the firewall and VPN capabilities. So there's VPN apps built into the PLC for direct connection, as well as a firewall for security connections. To address what the application scenario was, the customer was manually going out, pulling data from the web API or the web at USGS, but that site offers an API interface as well, that you can do standard HTTP calls to their site and pull data from it directly. And the original application was to take our PLC. They did not want their existing control system on the internet. It was air gap. They wanted it that way and to continue to be that way. So we set on top of the control system, pulled the USGS site, converted that data to an analog signal, which we wired into their control system. So they were fine with the security, but now they were able to take that data from the site and use it without human intervention daily. So,
All right. You want to walk us through the project a bit?
sure.
Awesome.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen.
All right, Ira's putting you on the clock. Ira, you're our time moderator.
All right. It says I cannot share while the other participants are sharing. I don't know.
And give it another shot. While you're working that out,
Yeah.
the world's greatest dentist, completely underappreciated. All they gave him was a little plaque.
Oh. Okay.
Sometimes a proper dad joke's all that's needed to get technology moving.
Okay. Are you seeing my screen yet?
I gotcha.
All right. Okay, great. Okay. So just a real quick look. So this is the web-based management of the PLC. Just wanted to start from there. The PLC is running. You can see the project running on it, firmware versions, these type of things. We can go in and do standard network configuration settings here. I just wanted to bring up the firewall capabilities. Again, we have an interface for that to set up standard rules or create custom rules. But this is capable of sitting right on the edge as a secure device. So to get a little start on what's going on here, the website, this is the website that's the web page that was developed and running on the PLC. Just a little history again, the user would have to go out to the USGS site and select their location, where that might be. This is a location close to my house. And they can get the discharge and stage information and then make the decision to interact with the PLC.
So basically they were making a very manual process, having to check in every day or
check in every day. Exactly.
Okay.
So what what this site offers, though, is the ability to send a command and get this JSON data from the site. So if you would break this down, this string down, you're seeing the same information. The location, there's the flow and stage. So what we were able to do is use the capabilities of Node-RED running. This is running on the PLC as well. And you can see that I'm just, as Terry mentioned, accessing that right from the this graphic editor is running on the PLC. I'm just accessing it via the my web browser.
And so on the left are the, just for someone that's never seen Node-RED before, right? So your workspace, your flow is there in the middle. Your and I'll get some of the terms right, but you're wrong. But your palette, right, is on the left.
Yeah.
And then on the right is essentially looking in at the information that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a debug window. You can get to different information here, but I was displaying the debug information. So really, this first flow is using stock palettes right from the install. We're going out and doing a HTTP GET request to that WaterWatch site. From there, we're massaging that data a little bit, creating some different variables to pass to the PLC based on that payload from the website. This bottom flow here is really just doing that reverse function. It's taking those variables, converting them, and sending them with a put command to the PLC via the PLC's API. So that's what's doing this, is doing it every minute, going out and requesting this data. So if you look at this WaterWatch site here and the command, that's the string I'm sending. If I, just for example, would want to go to a different site and get some different information, maybe I'll just grab one. All you really need to do is grab this site location number and change that in the string. And I'll deploy that change. And I'll just hit this timestamp here to trigger the request. And if we go back here now, we're at this creek in Reading. So
Very cool.
yeah. So and this could easily be automated and push those strings from the PLC web page here, but wanted to show you how that's really done on the Node-RED side. So that's really all that's happening here, but we're taking full advantage of the openness, the ease of use with Node-RED, and connecting to the cloud. So then at that point, really we're taking that data from the Node-RED side, and there's that flow and stage data that we're getting it here. And now you can use this as a conventional PLC, massage that data how you want to do it, connect it to real world IO. So I can connect it to analog outputs, change it to an integer value to display that on the web page, these kind of things.
Steve, what's this application that we're looking at here as far as we're on the PLC Next now? Is
Oh,
this...
yes, exactly. Thank you for that, Jeff. Yes, this is the PLC Next Engineer software. Again, free downloadable software. You can get it right from our site. You can program in function block diagram, ladder diagram, if you're more comfortable with that. Structured text, mix and match, intermingle those languages however you wish. This is another example here. Dave mentioned getting weather information. There's another site, openweathermap.org, and we actually have function blocks out on our store, PLC Next Store, which is a a location that you can go and download applications, apps, libraries, these kind of things. Some of them are cost, but the bulk of them are free solutions. So once that was downloaded, let's see here, get my area in. So this is really doing the same function that Node-RED's doing. It's just doing it on the PLC side, but it's going out and doing that same get command from now this open weather map, api.openweathermap.org. So it's pulling that data, and once we have that data, we can massage it, parse it, whatever you want to do, and display it back on the website. So now it's the same situation here. We're getting right from my hometown here, temperature, humidity, pressure. You can change Latin long, go to Google Maps and pull that Latin long data and paste it in here, these kind of things.
That's a beautiful day in late October.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. I'm not complaining.
That was not my central Pennsylvania experience a couple years ago at all.
Yeah. So really that's the last thing I just want to tie into is out on the store is the latest edition that we had just dropped out here is our PLC Next Edge Gateway. So to close that complete loop, what I've been showing here so far is connecting to a website and pulling data from the cloud. But the Edge Gateway gives you a great ability to push data out. So, and this is a web interface as well. You can install the application on the PLC, create cloud connections to, oh, I got it timed out here. Try again.
PASS.
Yeah. Monkey 12 it is. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So, so you can add connections to AWS, Azure, our service, Profi Cloud. You can enable them and add them, set up the connections here. In this example, we're actually using Sparkplug and connecting Sparkplug and publishing those string data as well as real data up to a broker. And in that case, I'm running Ignition. I still have 17 minutes left on my demo, but just a real, where is it at? I close the designer.
Yep.
Or maybe it's, well, we'll see here. But I guess the bottom line, we don't have to wait for this to start, is you can take this data, the big answer or the big capability here is just the ability to quickly add metrics from tags directly from the PLC and push them out to the cloud. That's what this interface is all about. You can take those tags and display them here on this web page as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Ira, time?
Yeah, I think we're right on time.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I think this is a great example of how you can pull third-party data into an industrial control system, and it does a good demonstration of showing the holistic part of what PLC Next is all about, integrating in Node-RED as well as the Sparkplug adapter to serve data up to Ignition, so you can pull data in, you can use the data, and then you can serve the data out as required. And I think that's a perfect segue to the Opto 22 team to talk about the products there in a different application, but accomplishing things in a similar way, I think. So
Live from Temecula.
All right, let's share a screen here. Don't worry, I'll shrink. Stop my video. And we'll come over to here. Of course, I have a dad joke.
There it is.
And in the spirit of the Halloween season, why don't skeletons ever get mad?
No idea.
No idea.
They're dead.
Because nothing gets under their skin.
Ah, love it.
All right.
Good.
The obligatory Opto 22, about Opto 22 slide. Quickly, we've been at this a while, nearly 5 decades, about half as long as Phoenix. Starting with solid state relays in the 70s and continuously evolving over the last 48 years to the solutions we ship today. And that evolution has always been based on a longstanding engineering philosophy of combining the best of both the OT worlds and the IT worlds into a cohesive platform that can deliver on the promises of automation and control as we would expect, plus data democratization, all built on a strong cybersecurity backbone. And since our first days to present day, we've always designed, built, and supported all of our products worldwide from right here in Southern California. And because we're a completely vertically integrated company, we are still shipping products to our customers every single day. So quickly about the hardware platform that I'll be featuring in today's webinar, Groove Epic. As I mentioned earlier, Epic is an acronym for Edge Programmable Industrial Controller. And while at its core, it's a PLC with I/O and a real-time controller, it actually offers a lot of features that you might find actually in an industrial PC, like a built-in web-based HMI, an HDMI port for connecting to external monitors, multiple network interfaces, and of course, a wide array of secure gateway features, making it ideal for both greenfield and brownfield applications. So let's jump into the use case. And I should begin by saying, like Phoenix's application, this is a real application by one of our customers here in California. And their job is to, they help wind turbine owners and operators manage their assets. And a full case study is on our website. Now, this has to do with what's called CAISO, or the California Independent System Operator. And what they do is they maintain reliability. This is right from their website. Maintain reliability on one of the largest and most powerful modern grids in the world, and operates a transparent, accessible wholesale energy market. They work around the clock to meet electrical needs of consumers while increasing the amount of renewable energy to usher in the notion of a cleaner, greener grid of the future. However, because renewable energy is generally not dispatchable, meaning CAISO can't directly initiate load control, they instead manage the loads by adjusting the price they'll pay for those who generate electricity. However, when the grid doesn't need any energy, usually because demand is low at a given time, CAISO uses price as a lever to manage supply to the grid. Well, at times, this spot price of electricity can actually fall to a negative number. And that means if an asset is generating when the grid doesn't need the energy, well, the turbine operators and turbine owners are essentially fined for generation during these periods. So these owners and operators, they really need to keep a very keen eye on that spot price, literally 24/7. Enter edge computing. Why not allow the turbine itself to actually query that spot price and then make a control decision based on that data, similar to what we saw with the USGS data. So let's take a look how we solved the dilemma. And for this application, we did use an Epic Groove Epic controller to actually control the turbine. Epic's quad-core Linux-based system, plenty of RAM, lots of SSD storage space, multiple network interfaces, and rated -20 to 70 degrees C. And as also previously mentioned, it does include a built-in HDMI port, so we can connect it to a local operator interface. And then the software we'll be using for this application is one, web-based Groove Manage, which allows us to commission and manage the Epic itself. Pack Control for programming. This was their choice for real-time control. They could have chosen CodeSys as well. There's actually a choice of control engines you can use on Epic. Node-RED for obtaining the price data from CAISO, and Groove View for creating web and mobile-ready HMIs for local and remote interfacing to the system. So here's the system architecture of kind of the pieces and parts in play. We'll start down here with the turbine and its instrumentation, its motor control, its on-off status, temperature, whatever. And that's wired into, local I/O here. It could be remote I/O, doesn't matter. But also the Epic has a separate network interface So if we needed to actually connect to other unsecure systems, say a Modbus device or another PLC, we can do that with the one of the network interfaces. I'll show you that in Groove Manage. And then we'll use the software, resident on the Epic, just like what we saw with the PLC Next, to do various tasks. Pick the right software for the job. So in this case, we are using Pack Control to actually do the real-time control. And indeed, just like PLC Next, we use Preempt RT, which is the real-time thread that's running on the Linux OS for making sure that that control program operates and behaves as we would expect. Then we have a couple of other things on there. Again, MQTT Sparkplug B, where we'll take all those data tags, move them up to a HiveMQ broker. We're using Node-RED, of course, to go out and query not only the queso spot price, but we're also getting temperature data as well from a different API. In this case, it's Dark Sky. And then we have Groove View. I'll show you that quickly. That's an HMI to provide local and remote interface. I'll show you how that works. And there's other tools on there too, kind of outside the scope of this particular event, but that gives you kind of a general overview of how the pieces work. So what I'm going to do next is actually switch over to this thing. And what we've done is taken the application itself and modeled it up behind me, even with a little model turbine from our friends at Lionel Train Sets. So here, it's just like we see in the illustration next to me here, we got our Epic, and it's got a control program running tied into IO and so on to get to the turbine, to get stack lights and all sorts of things. And then off one of those network interfaces, just as I described, in this case, we're connecting to AV and Siemens PLCs, but it could be anything. But what's important is this is a private network, so it's completely segmented from any other network on the system. And then there you see my HDMI cable going to a local operator interface. That's just a regular HDMI touchscreen monitor. And then this yellow cable is also indicated, just like we see in this illustration, as the connection that goes up to, say, the cloud, to on-premise applications, whatever. It's the network interface with a valid gateway. So let's take a look at how this is configured. And of course, we do that with a browser as well. So I'm going to switch my screen over to here so we can take a look at how this works. First step is we got to log into the Epic. In this case, my Epic is Epic DC008. That's just the host name. So we're actually getting to this device by its host name. You can do it by IP address as well, but host names work pretty well. Now I'm about to enter in my credentials to actually log into this device. And that's important because I cannot access this device unless I have a valid account. But before I go and click on sign in and send those credentials over the wire, I want to make sure I have a secure connection. And indeed, these devices are designed to be secure out of the box. So there is no default username and password. You must create one and you must create a secure connection. All those tools are built in. So now that I'm comfortable with a secure connection to the device, I log into basically the homepage. And right there is where I set up my accounts, my users, and I can use LDAP to centrally manage those users if I like. I can have different users with different rights. Then we're going to jump in over here to network. How does this thing actually live on the network? So I'm going to come over here to status, and there I can see I've got Ethernet 0. That's the one connected to the PLCs or other devices. And generally those devices are unsecure. So by putting them on their own segment, we can secure those devices. On Ethernet 1, that's my yellow cable, the one that's connected out to a valid gateway. And the valid gateway, of course, is right there. That gives me outbound access to reach, cloud services, other network services, wherever they may be. And I am running VPN, OpenVPN client. It's automatically connected. So I can access this device remotely, securely, authenticated, and encrypted. Okay, so that's quickly about the network settings. But as we saw on the PLC Next, the same thing is security. You've got to be able to manage who has access to what ports on the system, to what services that are running on the device. So indeed, I want to block all access on that yellow Ethernet 1 interface because it's connected to the internet, obviously through a router and so on. But I want to still make sure that I don't allow any inbound connections to that device except by authenticated users over encrypted connections. So all the various services that are running on this device, I have complete capability on each interface, the VPN, the Ethernet 1, Ethernet 0, even Wi-Fi. And then, of course, here's some of the tools for setting up your certs and so on. But we got to keep moving here. Let's talk quickly about the controller. As I said, you have two choices. You can use our own pack control, which we've had for 30 years. It is what I'm using in this application, or CodeSys. So pack controllers there. I've got my dashboard, well, my status page, so I can see that I have a running application in there. It's running so many charts. And real quickly, that pack control environment looks like this. Again, a free download from our website. You develop your control application in flowcharts. You've got your tags, your variables, your IOs here. You simply, create flows in here, and these execute with that real-time thread on the Epic. So we'll squirt back here, and just wanted to make sure we understood about the controller side of this thing. And then, of course, the other thing that I'm going to talk about a little later, but it's quick to point out here, is the data service. We do have this set up directly into the system, where I am sending all the data from the controller to a broker, as I described in my illustration, and also it's an OPC-UA server. So, the whole notion of MQTT versus MQTT versus OPC is really out the window. You use what you want. Both are supported, as is in any devices that do this right. You don't have to make a choice. You can do both. And we'll show you more about MQTT later. But let's dive right in and take a look at Node-RED. There's a couple of things I'm going to cover here. Node-RED for communicating to the Queso API to get the data, and also HMI, the GrooveView interface. So let's start off with Node-RED. Once again, I'm in here. I am indeed connected securely, so that the only way I can get to Node-RED is if I authenticate. I've already authenticated by logging into the system. And I have a nice, again, status page, so I can see Node-RED's running, what its CPU usage is. I can manage my projects here, so I can do backups, I can restore. I've even got a Node-RED console. So as Terry mentioned, Node.js is running, kind of in the background. It's the engine for Node-RED. The console allows me to see exactly what's happening down at that level. So just some debugging tools there as well. So let's go back into Node-RED and jump right into the editor. And as we said before, the editor is right here in the browser. Here's that first flow. And this flow is getting the spot price of the electricity from the Queso web server. However, Queso doesn't have a traditional web API where I can just send it a string and get returned JSON. That's how typical RESTful APIs work. Queso, on the other hand, what they do is they have an API call I can make, but it's literally to download a file, a zip file. And inside the zip file is an XML document. And inside the XML document is the data I really care about and want to get to my control strategy. Go ahead.
They're making it easy for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just to give you an idea, we had to go back and actually download that API, which is this multi-page document. And this tells you how to format the string and so on to make the API call to download that file. But that's okay. That's Node-RED. It's this easy lifting for Node-RED. We'll format a time period. So we want 5-minute interval data on a given asset in the field. So that given asset in the field is identified with the inject node. That's what we're going to add to the message payload so that we can actually go for this asset and get price interval LMP, which is simply the locational marginal price, spot price for short. So I take that, I build a query string, and I send it to the Queso servers. And then what I get back is that file. So again, the power of Linux on Node-RED, I actually write that file to local disk. Then I unzip it. I rename the file because the file name is always the same. So I rename it to something unique. I get that file. I convert that, and that file is an XML. I convert it to JSON. Pretty simple to do. By clicking on here, I just say, change the message payload to JSON. Once I've done that, I find inside that document, I have both strings and floats. So in my string array, I'm going to write that data down to the pack to a string table. And in the float data, I want to write right to a float variable that is the spot price. And that's pretty easy too. As Terry mentioned, we have Node-RED flows up on nodered.org that are designed to talk directly to the control strategy. So I just say, I want to write that information to the local controller, string table, and that tag name of that string table in the control strategy is called CalIS or CAISO data. So if I go back to my control program, I can scroll down. There's CAISO data in my string table. If I double click on it, there's all the data that came out of that XML zip file from CAISO. So it's nice to have real RESTful APIs, but in the event you don't, you can still perform all the functions you need. So that's essentially what we see there. And this operates basically on a 5-minute interval. So we're always getting the spot price, because if it ever goes negative, we want to make sure that we're turning off that turbine so we don't get fined. For standard APIs, we also get weather, but in this case, we're using dark sky, which is going to be sunsetted here soon. So we're going to have to switch to open weather map. But here again, I'm just putting in the coordinates of where that turbine is. And this turbine happens to be in Tehachapi, California, which is, I don't know, a few hours north of where we are here in Temecula, California. So once I paste that in, I send the API call. And again, I write the string data to the weather string table and the float data to float, so I can interact with them immediately within the control program. I've also got another flow down here. It's another weather API call, but it's a little different. And I'll show you that when I get to the HMI, which actually right now is a good time to do that. So let's take a look at how we can visualize all this data that we're getting from these various systems. So I'm going to go back to home here, and I'm going to click on Groove View. And again, we get a little status page, so we understand what the HMI is doing, what its CPU usage is, et cetera, et cetera. And I open up Groove View, and there it is in the browser, just as we would expect. So I've got my turbine control. I am in auto mode right now. So indeed, what I've said is my set point is 78. So if they'll pay me $78 or more, I will start generating energy on the grid. Now, that's an artificially high number. Right now, the real-time live spot price of data for the wind turbine in that particular region up in Tehachapi happens to be $53. So as soon as I come in here and change this and say, hey, I can make money generating energy at 25, I enter it, and boom, the turbine goes on. So getting data externally, writing that down, and making a control decision to actually start that turbine. And now we can see when I'm in auto step mode, it is above the price. So we're actually turning on the turbine. So now I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to go ahead and drop this guy back up to, let's just put him up to about 55. And it stops exactly as it's intended to do. So I'm also trending the spot price of electricity over time in this simple HMI. And this is all local. So I'm actually tied to the device. And the screen that you see in my browser is exactly the same screen on this local interface. 2 different users logged in, but they're both getting the same information. Now, the beauty of Node-RED is I've got all this rich data from the API. Same as we saw before, we're going to go ahead and present all that data right here on the screen. So in essence, what I've been able to do is take this notion of an XML document and turn it into a viewable screen, but also because it's now in the system, it's all available via MQTT, OPC, whatever. So we've actually taken external data source and turned it into MQTT and OPC UA tags. So you may be asking yourself, well, how do you build these screens? Well, thanks to the browser, we do it right here in the browser. We switch to build mode, and here is the development environment for the HMI. So I've got all my pages over here. I've got various gadgets I drag and drop up onto the canvas. And then once it's in the canvas, I just click to a data source. In this case, I'm just going right to that string table, the same breakdown you saw over on the control program side. I click that, I get whatever array element it was, in this case, index 1 of that string table, and then I click and save. But I've also got a kind of a nice little feature here where, let's say they're out on the out near the turbine and they have a network connection to it from their mobile device. Well, they want to be able to build screens that may look good on a smartphone. So indeed, there's a way to take all the data from the main screen and flow it a little differently so that you can see it actually on a mobile device. I actually have an example of that right here. So I'll pull that over. This is my phone. I'm just connected up here to the device, but I can see all of the live screens coming right into my mobile system, right? That happens to be on the same network, so I can see that data. So we'll
And to
get
be-
rid of that guy.
To be
for now.
clear, Vincent, that's not a control. That's just a visibility.
It's usability, but if I'm logged in properly and I have the ability to set auto control or I can manually do whatever, but I have to have a valid account to do that
Cool. Awesome.
from my mobile device. So that's kind of the short part of the GrewView HMI. Last one I'll show you there is the weather. Same thing. We've got our current temperature. This is for the lat and long of the turbine. So where the turbine's located is 50 degrees, 44% humidity. And of course, wind speed becomes pretty important as well in determining how we want to run that turbine. So we're getting that information there as well. But there may be cases where you actually want to do custom weather. We saw Steve do a really cool thing where he simply changed the lat and long in his Node-RED flow to get a different set of data back. And indeed, we can do the same thing here. We're just doing it from the HMI. So in this case, I've got, this is custom weather. Right now, I'm just looking in California. Temecula, it's 56 degrees, but I want to have a little fun here. So I'm going to come over here and I previously looked up the headquarters of Phoenix Contact where Dave, I think Dave, you're there in that particular facility. The beauty of this is in Google Maps, I can find any location I want, right click and click the coordinates and they'll copy to my clipboard. Then I come back to my GrewView HMI and I paste in those credentials. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking data from the HMI and pushing it into Node-RED, and then Node-RED will go make that call. So we're doing this on the fly. So now turns out that you guys are actually warmer than in California. It's 60 degrees, a little bit more humid, and your wind is a little bit less. But just kind of showing the power of how these systems all can work together. Nothing's an island. Everything is designed to work together. So there you go. That's kind of the HMI thing. Now, one last thing on Node-RED, because we've all been talking about getting data from different locations. It looks like I'm still okay on time. There's one other one I want to show you. Every time I turn on or off that turbine, I actually get a text message. Here's an example where we download a node from node-red.org called Twilio. And Twilio is a way for me to send text messages right from Node-RED. So I look at the turbine motor status, I convert that Boolean information to the text, and I create a constructed text message. And if that turbine status ever changes, and I'll go ahead and change it right from my screen here. Actually, I'm going to pull that back out. I'll pull that back out there, and I'll take it out of auto mode and go back to the main page. And I'll go ahead and manually turn on the turbine. And when I do so, my phone's on do not disturb, but I'll just go ahead and look at my text messages. And indeed, there's the turbine generating at 13 minutes after the hour. So this notion now of taking data and pushing it to a service, live data, so that you can get that information on your phone. So pretty cool there too. We'll drop that guy over there. All right, finally, as we saw with the Phoenix Contact solution, we are taking all this data and we are indeed moving it up to a web page. Terry, if you'd like, or Ben, you guys can drop that into the, let's turn that guy off. I'm pulling in here into the system architecture. I'm simply moving the data up to MQTT in this case, and I'm then ingesting that information into my Ignition server. So I have an Ignition server, a public server here at Opto 22. That comes into Ignition. And then I can have other applications, including OPC UA type applications, pulling that data in as well. So again, that notion of MQTT versus OPC doesn't really matter. I'm using a standard OPC UA client here to pull that data in. But one other thing that's kind of cool is I can also, because I'm getting the data into MQTT, I can have other applications ingest that data from that single source of truth. So in this case, I'm actually going to open up Canary, the Canary Historian. So I can click on this button. It'll open up the Axiom interface to my historical data. And indeed, all the data that's coming out of the system is being historized on a Canary server. And the Axiom interface allows me to actually see all of that data being presented right here. So I can see the status of the turbine turning on and off. I can see the spot price over time. I can even look at, say, maybe 30 days of that information right here on my Canary Historian. that'll render and pull it up, and we'll be able to see all that information. So we can see where some of the spikes are. We can even see where it gets close to zero, where you absolutely want to be turning off the turbine so you're not levying any fines. So that's pretty much a wrap on my demo, really showing a lot of that integration of all those pieces coming together based on cutting edge technology like we see with PLC Next and Groove Epic to tie all the pieces together. It's important that we're using the right software for the job and be able to democratize all this data, but at the same time, making sure we're doing it securely. So just because we have something connected to the internet or a path to the internet does not mean it's exposed to the internet for attackers to come in. Because of those firewalls, because of all the capabilities from a security standpoint, we're doing this very, very safely.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll stop my share. I know that was quite a fire hose of information there, but hopefully you guys got something out of it.
That's why we record them, Vincent. We can go back and rewatch both the presentations at the speed that we want to rewatch them. Hey, let's start to land the plane. Ira.
Yes.
We want to talk about pricing. So how about Benson? You're on a roll. Walk us through the price of what we saw. Give us an alternative.
Sure. So we did base this on Groove Epic. This is a demo I've been doing for years. So if any of the videos you've seen, it's already all tied up. And that's a $1,595 USD list. And I just checked yesterday afternoon. It is in stock. So if you want one, get one now. Of course, in that case, you add I/O based on your application and a power supply, again, based on your needs. That is the 4-core Linux-based CPU with all the things I described before. And it includes all the software and free support and free training. So we have a Opto U training that teaches you Node-RED, it teaches you Groove View, it teaches you Pack Control, all of that. And then Terry's got videos on Node-RED on YouTube that are in the hundreds of thousands of views. So there's a lot of resources to help you get started doing this. And then we also have another option that's using the Groove Rio, still Linux-based, a little smaller. It's a single core Linux-based system, and that's $995. Has everything we just talked about. The difference is Rio, at the moment, it doesn't have a control engine on it, a real-time control engine. But stay tuned. You'll see that very, very soon.
Cool. Thank you.
And from the the Phoenix Contact side, looking at PLC Next, the controller that you saw today is the AXCF 2152. So you see the numbers there, the 2152. That particular processor is $882. Similar to the Groove Epic, you need to look at what IOs you would need to satisfy whatever application you're doing. And then, of course, from there is a scale of controllers where you can go up to a 3152 or even some IPCs, depending on the horsepower you need for whatever application you're running. So there is a scale of processors that can be used for different kinds of applications, but by far, in most applications today, the 2152 controller seems to be really a sweet spot for common automation tasks and aggregating the data like we saw here today. And then in addition to that, of course, Phoenix Contact as a whole has a host of power supplies, relays, cables, terminal blocks, DIN rail, wire duct. I can be here 20 more minutes telling you all the things that we have to offer. We can fill out that control cabinet for you.
And some really also good swag in the form of beer openers, bottle openers. Still got one over in
absolutely. You got to come check us out at a trade show. And we'll hook you up.
That's exactly right.
We'll it'll be untapped,
Oh, well done.
Well done.
Node-RED, completely free, open source, and one of the things that I think is awesome, both Opto and Phoenix Contact is questions about Node-RED, contact us. We'll support your questions on Node-RED as part of our product support.
And Jeff, can I make a note here?
Yeah.
You don't need a Groove Epic or a PLC Next to get started with Node-RED today.
Okay.
You can absolutely download Node-RED for free. You can run it on your Windows PC, grab a Raspberry Pi, if you can find one nowadays, and load it on there and have some fun. You'd be surprised at how useful this tool is and the kinds of things you can do. So, and you can get started at no cost. and then use the training videos, from PLC Next or from Opto or YouTube, and take a dive into what's capable here. I think you'll be really impressed with its capabilities.
I would just like to figure out how I can text blast somebody from the office every time a light switch gets turned on or off, and see how long it takes for them to understand that's why they're getting a text.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you just got to be careful with that, Benson, because as someone that has incorporated a Raspberry Pi and used Node-RED and then tied it into a home automation system,
right,
the wife palatability factor is very low on that tech stack. So you got to make sure you have extreme uptime on that. And when that light switch isn't working, it can be bad news. So have fun, but air gap that system, we'll say.
Well, I will tell you this is and Ben's got a bunch of stories, as we all do, from home automation, but we did find a node. It's an Alexa node that goes right into Node-RED. And as soon as you drop that node on your pallet and hit deploy, Alexa will find that node. And that's how my wife interacts with all my home automation systems. She doesn't have to go to her phone or the iPad. She just says, Alexa, turn off the hutch light, and boom, it happens.
That's
so
awesome.
There's Node-RED's pretty cool. If you guys take a look at it, I think you'll be impressed.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And then my plug would be, as you're building things and having fun, share them on the Integrate Live community, please, integratelive.com. Now let's go to some of these great questions that have come in. Hey, Ben, in just a second, I'm going to ask you to just highlight 2 or 3 that you have already answered. Here's my question to the general panel. The pushback on coming into this virtual workshop was 2 things. Why wouldn't I just do this the traditional way? Why wouldn't I just fire up a database that's securely going out somewhere else and pinging these APIs and then bring that information into a SQL database and then serve that into my control environment? Question number 1. Question number 2, let's just hit the security again. How is this secure? Where are my vulnerabilities? Who wants to take the first part?
On the first one, I would simply say that that's how they did do it. So this particular application, the wind turbines, that is how they did it. They did it at one central location and did it through a database. And then they had to worry about getting that data back out to each of those turbines. By putting the logic down in the turbine itself and it making the call, it can make that control decision there, regardless of that database connection. And the second part of that is, now that those are all laid out there, and we're talking about scale here, we're talking about, thousands of turbines. They can all publish their data MQTT for what they're doing, and now I can actually scale the system out rather than doing everything in one central location. So for our customer, that was a pretty key aspect of it. And Ira or somebody else, you guys want to? I'll talk cybersecurity all day, but I want to give you guys a shot.
Sure. Also, on that topic, Benson, you've got an additional piece of hardware, a computer somewhere that needs to be patched and upgraded and so forth for that database connection, where that disappears when we do the architecture we talked about today. So
Dave, you're right on the money. Yep. And to that end, who maintains that database? Typically IT. What we're trying to do is get these kinds of IT type tools in the hands of OT, right? Let us as control engineers put a solution together that we don't have to have that heavy reliance on somebody maintaining that server, maintaining those databases, and so on.
One of the things that just hit my mind as Dave and Steve were going through their presentation was, originally an operator had to have an outbound browser with internet access to be going out to these websites and checking status, right? And that in itself all of a sudden becomes a bit of a vulnerability, right? When I'm giving internet access to my control team, well, who knows what else we're going to be picking up while we're searching the web.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah,
But,
and I mean, when you're looking at, sorry, Benson, but when you're looking at security, I mean, you need to consider it. Whether you're talking about an API call, where you're talking about an operator going to get the information, whatever it is, it's a continuous process. It needs to evolve in whatever system you're using. It needs to be monitored. And it's just important to understand that you can't protect everything, and you need to evolve with it. It's a living, breathing thing, and it needs to just scale with your operations, just like anything that you're doing. Limiting yourself with because of security will not to say that you shouldn't put guidelines on things or guardrails on things, but you need to consider that if you put too many barriers between you and ultimately what needs to happen in operations, people will take shortcuts, and those shortcuts will result in other vulnerabilities. So yeah, it's just it's a holistic topic that needs to be considered with any system.
Well said. Ben, wrap us up with one more question. Your best question that you had during the session.
Well, you've already sort of touched on it, Jeff. The questions were security heavy for sure. So rather than actually going back over that again, I think the guys have really hit that well, Jeff. So I just wanted to pass on to everyone in case somebody hasn't had a chance to look through the questions that, yes, security, making API calls and things like that is clearly on everyone's mind.
Cool. I'll post the Q&A on integrate-live.com in the session article that's going to have this recording live in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay.
Good deal.
Well, guys, thank you. On behalf of the entire community, thank you for the work that you put into this. It showed, and this was a really interesting project. I think there's been a lot of value in seeing the way that you solve these problems with customers in actual case studies. And so to our entire audience, thank you so much for being here. Panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is going to put episode 8 of the virtual workshop in the books. Come back next week for what I guarantee you is going to be the most entertaining rundown that we've had to date. Everybody, have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Great job, Phoenix.
Have a good one,
Hey,
guys.
thanks a lot, guys. All right.
See ya.
Yes, guys.